So tell us, what is the benefit of having a regional transportation system in a community like this one?
Regional transportation planning is really critical. As you know, metropolitan regions across the U.S. are made up of many different local jurisdictions, multiple counties often, and our transportation systems don't stop at the boundaries of those cities and towns and counties. So we really need to be thinking about broader systems and how we can be planning for a future at that regional level.
Based on what you know as a professor of urban planning, does the current model that exists within Pima County sort of meet those expectations?
I think it does in many ways, and I think the federal government started requiring these metropolitan planning organizations back in the 1970s, and the primary charge to those was distributing federal sources of funding, as well as making sure that regional transportation planning was happening in different regions.
Those sources of funding that you reference, it can be controversial because you have people in certain communities looking at other regions, wondering, was this fair? Was this equitable? Did they get what they needed when we've been paying perhaps the bulk? What do you say about those sources and how exactly it works?
It's appropriate for people to be asking these questions. What we want is a transparent process that allows people to have confidence that these funding decisions are being made in an equitable manner. And I think that that is sort of the spirit of some of these questions that are being asked right now in terms of how this process is working, both in terms of where those federal funds are distributed, but also in terms of the regional taxes that are collected and distributed for transportation projects, especially as we near the end of the current RTA and start thinking about a vote to reauthorize and go ask voters for more funding.
To be clear, though, there are instances where the larger population centralized in a metro region, those taxpayers could be paying more, but perhaps not seeing the same level of projects. Is that fair?
That is possible, though we do have some accounting that we've seen from the regional authorities that show they're trying to keep that fairly balanced. I think the bigger question to me is one about decision making, and we have the city of Tucson makes up just over 50% of the population of the region that's represented by PAG. Yet when we look at the decision making structures, both for PAG and for RTA, the mayor of Tucson is our one vote on the 9-member council. So that works out to about 11% of votes in these decision-making bodies.
Which doesn't seem balanced, does it?
No, it doesn't. And I think especially when you start to look at some of the demographic, the distributions of where people live in the region, we have an even larger underrepresentation of low-income people, of the Hispanic Latino communities, of transit riders, of younger people, of people living in poverty. So I think we do have some real questions that need to be asked.
If and when this goes before the voter again, what sorts of questions should they be asking themselves about transportation systems like this one?
So I think the most critical question that I would encourage people to ask themselves when considering whether to vote for something like this is whether the transportation projects being proposed align with that voter's vision for our community in 10, 20, or 30, or even 50 years. These are big funding packages, and they really do help to shape the future of our city and our region. And so, if you're a voter who, like I do, thinks that climate change and reducing carbon emissions, improving safety on our streets when we're seeing, in many years over the last decade, record numbers of pedestrians being killed. If you think that transportation equity and making sure that our system is serving those who are, have the least opportunity among us in our communities, making sure that the transportation proposals that are being put forward in such a package really are aligning with your own priorities and that community priority.
Dr. Arlie Atkins, a professor of urban planning at the University of Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you.